In this video, I will be tracing the spread of Gematria from the biblical languages of Hebrew and Greek to the Latin of Renaissance Europe, and thence to the modern European languages based on Roman script. This entails a whistle-stop tour of European esoteric philosophy from the Church Fathers up to the luminaries of the Renaissance. The goal is to recover a lost and Kabbalistic key to Renaissance works of art and literature. We start with Saint Jerome, who was a church father, a scholar, and an outstanding linguist. He had expert knowledge of Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. Jerome's great work was the Vulgate, which was a complete translation of the Bible into Latin. Before Jerome, there were Latin translations from both Old and New Testaments, known as the Vetus Latina, but they didn't form a complete or coherent text. It was Jerome's triumph to produce a Latin version of the Scriptures that would go on to be the definitive church text from the 4th century to the present day. In terms of scholarly output and influence on developing Christianity, Jerome was only surpassed by his contemporary and correspondent, St. Augustine. Augustine is particularly relevant to the study of Gematria because he came to Christianity from a background of Platonism and Neoplatonism. This means he had a very high regard for numerical philosophy. And in his famous book, The City of God, he stated, "The divine wisdom is reflected in the numbers impressed in all things. The construction of the physical and moral world alike is based on eternal numbers." What's more, he explicitly recognised the use of Gematria in St. John's Gospel. In chapter 2, verses 19 and 20, we see, "Jesus answered and said unto them, Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Then said the Jews, 46 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? Augustine explained that 46 referred to the name Adam, because when written in Greek, the letter values of the name add up to 46. And here Adam refers to the physical body, which was to die at the crucifixion, and then be followed by the resurrection on the 3rd day. This establishes beyond any doubt the seriousness with which Gematria was taken in esoteric Christianity. The following century, another Christian writer, Boethius, sought to reconcile the teachings of Plato and Aristotle with Christian theology. And in translating many classic Greek texts into Latin, he actually preempted a major component of Renaissance intellectual endeavour by a full 1,000 years. One characteristic quotation from Boethius is that everything constructed in primeval nature seems to have been formed by the reason of numbers. The extreme reverence for mathematics and numbers carried forward to the medieval period. In the 13th century, Roger Bacon was arguably the most outstanding intellectual in England, and famous throughout Europe. He was a scientist, a linguist, a philosopher, and, as a Franciscan friar, he was committed to the Christian faith. He was also a Hermeticist. For Bacon, mathematics was the gate and key of all the sciences. And if an inquirer lacked the quadrivium, the 4 mathematical sciences of arithmetic, geometry, astronomy and music, he had very little ability to discover the truth. A century later, Geoffrey Chaucer, the father of English literature, put a literary spin on the divinely significant subject of numbers through the words of his parson. God hath create all things in right order, and no thing without an order, but all things been ordered and numbered. At this time, the numerical literary device of Gematria had high status. It even featured on the curriculum at Oxford University. The 14th century manuscript from Merton College lists arithmetic with Gematria as one of 9 subjects to be studied on a course. The title of the manuscript was Algebra in Prose, and the writer records 11 days of Gematria study with one fellow and 9 days with another. A similarly dated manuscript from Balliol College gives an example of Gematria use in English. It comes in the form of a Kabbalistic riddle. 8 is my true love, do before 9, put thereto 5, so it will beseem 18 twice told, 20 between. And for those in need of a hint, the writer inserted a gloss beneath. He that readeth this right wotteth what I mean. This goeth by the letters of the ABC, the ABC, as the letters stand in number. In the 24-letter alphabet of English at that time, H was 8, I was the 9th letter, E the 5th. So I before H and then E. And the end of the word had 2 S's split by a U, or V. And this gives the medieval spelling of Jesus, or Jesus. An alternate version of this puzzle from Cambridge University uses English letters transliterated into Greek to achieve the same result. In 8 is all my love, and 9 be set before, so 8 be closed above, then 3 is good therefore. This gives the English capital letters I, H, C. And these are identical to the Greek capital letters iota, eta, sigma. And that's assuming that the latter is the old-fashioned lunate sigma rather than the modern sigma that we see as a mathematical symbol, like a sort of an S in a Z, reversed Z configuration. And this gives the Greek abbreviation of Jesus, Jesus. These two examples refer to a simple Gematria code for English based on ordinal values given to the 24-letter alphabet. It runs from A equals 1, B equals 2, C 3, through to Z equals 24. Notice that the letters I and J were not distinguished at this time, nor the U and the V. So these pairs were used interchangeably, and the value remained the same, at either 9 or 20. This code is very similar to the corresponding Latin code. The only difference is that Latin did not have the letters K or W, so it was only a 22-letter alphabet. So now we have short or simple codes for Hebrew, Greek and English / Latin. And however, in Hebrew and Greek, it is the long or hierarchical codes which are of primary importance. These have 9 units, 9 tens and 9 hundredths. If any comparable scheme of Gematria exists for English or Latin, it too should exist as a code of 9 units, 9 tens and 9 hundredths. In order to look for this code, it is necessary to trace the scarlet thread of the Kabbalah as it weaves through Renaissance thought. The foundational text of the Kabbalah is the Zohar, and it emerged in late 13th century Spain and was written by a Spanish Jew called Moses de Leon, although he did attribute it to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai over 1,000 years before. The Zohar excited great interest not only among Jews, but also among Christian readers, who saw it providing confirmation of the tenets of their faith too. At the same time the Zohar was published, another Spaniard, Ramon Lull, introduced a philosophical system that took the name of Lullism, or a Lull's art. This had some similarities with Kabbalism because it involved combinations of letters, numbers and diagrams, and was aimed at providing mathematical verification of Christian teachings. Lull was not a Kabbalist, although many later Christian Kabbalists believed he was the original exponent of their ideas. Lull was also mistakenly identified as an alchemist, but there's no evidence for this. The next important voice to be heard is that of Marsilio Ficino, who came from Florence in Italy. He was a humanist philosopher, an astrologer and a linguist. He was also an ardent Platonist and translated all of Plato's works into Latin. He also started a new Platonic academy in Florence. Ficino's greatest student was Giovanni Pico della Mirandola. He was a highly educated, highly innovative and precocious talent. At the age of just 23, he attempted an extremely bold reformation of religion, philosophy, natural philosophy, and magic by producing 900 theses infused with the latest scholarly insights of Platonism, Aristotelism, Hermeticism, and Kabbalah. He intended to debate these in a public forum with scholars in Rome. However, the Pope was not amused. But in introducing these theses, he wrote an oration on the dignity of man, and in time this came to be regarded as a manifesto for the Renaissance. Pico's espousal of Kabbalah in his theses was intended as a way of validating the eternal truths of Christianity, and at the same time of providing a means of effecting divine magic. The whitest of white magic, but magic nonetheless. For all his public espousal of Kabbalah, Platonism and Hermeticism, Pico was aware that the inner secrets of these esoteric philosophies needed to be kept out of public sight. He wrote, "It was the opinion of the ancient theologians that divine subjects and the secret mysteries must not be rashly divulged. The Egyptians had sculpted sphinxes in all their temples for no other reason than to indicate that divine things, even when they are committed to writing, must be covered with enigmatic veils and poetic dissimulation." So this implies that a Gematria will reveal the divine subjects and the secret mysteries which cannot otherwise be seen by reading the text. As to what these divine subjects and secret mysteries are, there are probably four. There's a Hermetica, the writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, thrice greatest Hermes, which are essentially the Corpus Hermeticum. There was Alchemia, which is the arcane transmutation of physical matter or the spirit, two fairly separate branches. There is Kabbalah, which are the spiritual secrets originating in the Hebrew scriptures, but also existing in the Christian scriptures. And finally, Magia, which is magic, practices to manipulate the hidden world. Among Pico's followers, the greatest exponent of Christian Kabbalah was Johann Reuchlin. Reuchlin was a German humanist scholar and an expert in Latin, Greek and Hebrew. His first major work was the Wonder-Working Word, or De Verbo Mirifico. This was based on a Kabbalistic transformation of the name of God. The Tetragrammaton, or four-letter name, Yod-He-Vav-He, or Yahweh, magically morphed into the name of Jesus, with the addition of a single letter Shin into its centre. This letter was seen as an indication of the incarnation of God, and it was believed to prove both the validity of Christianity and the fact that Christianity was a logical development of Judaism. Moreover, the five-letter Pentagammaton was believed to be a powerful magical talisman. And Reuchlin later developed his ideas about Christian Kabbalah in his 1517 opus, 3 books on the Kabbalistic art, De Arte Kabbalistica Libritres. In similar vein, Francesco Giorgi was an Italian theologian who believed the Kabbalah could verify the divine credentials of Christianity and also help convert Jews to the faith. His most famous work was a book called De Harmonia Mundi Totius, the harmony of the whole world. This was a Kabbalistic, Hermetic and Neoplatonic book and incorporated strong elements of geometry and Vitruvian architecture. Giorgi had quite a strong connection with England, and his theological expertise was called upon by Henry VIII when he was trying to procure a divorce from Catherine of Aragon. Giorgi has also been cited as an important source for Kabbalistic references in Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. If we now look at a timeline of these Renaissance luminaries, it can be seen that Ficino was first born, and Pico's short life is completely contained within Ficino's mature years. Pico was apparently poisoned with arsenic by Piero de' Medici at the age of just 31, along with his lover Poliziano. Pico's followers, Reuchlin and Giorgi, were more or less contemporaries, and Giorgi saw most of Henry VIII's lifespan. We can also see that the two great Renaissance artists, Leonardo da Vinci and Albrecht Dürer, lived at the same time. They were influenced by the same intellectual forces and were not immune to the esoteric pull of Magia, Kabbalah and Hermetica. One other important landmark to notice is the appearance of Gutenberg's Bible at the start of this period, in 1455. This was the first book to be printed on a commercial scale and heralded a revolution in the transmission of the written word. I would now like to focus on 4 more contemporaries, this time all from Northern Europe, and all highly eminent men, and well acquainted with each other. These are Henry Cornelius Agrippa, Thomas More, John Colet, and Desiderius Erasmus. Erasmus was one of the greatest and most influential scholars of the Renaissance. He was a linguist and a theologian, but well steeped in the humanistic zeitgeist that drew on the literature and philosophy of classical antiquity. He was both an author of satirical fiction and a compiler of definitive versions of the New Testament in its original Greek, the Textus Receptus, and also of Latin translations. Sir Thomas More was a very close friend to Erasmus for over 35 years. He was a statesman, a lawyer, and a member of Parliament. He was a member of the Privy Council, the Star Chamber, and then rose to become Lord High Chancellor of England, the right-hand man of King Henry VIII, and the most powerful man in the country after the King. He was also an author with a satirical bent and famous for his book Utopia. John Colet was the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. He was also the private chaplain to King Henry VIII, and as a man of independent means, he also founded St. Paul's School for Boys. He was a humanist scholar and a theologian with a strong interest in Platonism and Kabbalah. He was an admirer of Ficino and Mirandola, and like Erasmus, he was an intimate friend of Sir Thomas More. Henry Cornelius Agrippa was a scholar, a soldier, a physician, a Kabbalist, and a magus, a practitioner of white magic. In the summer of 1510, he was sent on a secret mission by the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I to the court of Henry VIII. While in London, he stayed for several months in John Colet's house in Stepney. it is almost certain he would have met Sir Thomas More and Erasmus, who was also in London at exactly that time. In the self-same year, Agrippa finished the first draft of his magnum opus, the 3 books of occult philosophy. This vast compendium of the magical arts is now recognized as the cornerstone of Western esotericism. On publication some 21 years later, it was dedicated and prefaced by his mentor, Johannes Trithemius, Abbot of Sponheim, who also happened to be the founder of modern cryptography. We now need to take a look inside Agrippa's great book on occult philosophy, because it is in the second of his 3 books, chapter 19, that Agrippa provides the Gematria Key of Hebrew. In chapter 18, he provides that of Greek. And in chapter 20, he provides the Latin code. Finally, it will be seen that this is based on the 23-letter Latin alphabet, but extended to allow for 9 units, 9 tens, and 9 hundredths. Agrippa explains how this is achieved. And seeing in the Roman alphabet there are 4 letters lacking to make up 27, their places are supplemented by the J and V consonants, as in the names John and Valentine, and the HI and HV aspirate consonants, as in Hiram and Wilhelm. However, the Germans use double V for HV, while the Italians write Vilemus and the French Guillemus. In English, the double V or double U was already quite well established at the beginning of names like William or Walter. The aspirate HI, on the other hand, does not naturally occur in English, so it is generally redundant. So now, the question mark is no longer required. We have, instead, a key, the long code, the major code of English and Latin, and German, and Italian, and French, and every other modern European language based on Roman script. This is the master key to the secrets of the Western occult tradition, the secrets of the Magi of the Renaissance. Agrippa hints at the power and scope of his revelation. And let no man wonder, by the numbers of names, many things may be prognosticated, seeing in those numbers lie certain occult mysteries understood by few, and for the Most High created all things by number, weight, and measure, from whence the truth of letters and names had its original, which were not instituted casually, but by a certain rule. Hence John in Revelation saith, Let him that hath understanding compute the number of the name of the beast, which is the number of a man. For many years I thought the 3 books of occult philosophy was the only place where the Gematria code of Latin was revealed. However, I recently found one other. In 1591, an Italian scholar with the curious name of Pietro Bongo, otherwise Latinized to Petrus Bungus, wrote a book called Numerorum Mysteria, the Mystery of Numbers. It is a detailed compendium exploring the mystical significance of numbers. And on page 625 he supplies the long or 27-letter Gematria codes of Hebrew, Greek and Latin. And the Latin code is Agrippa's code, and he uses the same explanations for its application to Italian, French and German. The other thing he does is to count the number of the beast in Italian. This then, among the Italians, will be the sum of the numbers of the perfidious heresiarch Martin Lutera. 30, 180, 100, 9, 40, 20, 200, 105, 81, which together make 666. This was the head and patriarch of the heretics, who all armed themselves against the doctrine of Christ and his good deeds. Add to their combinations the Hebrew characters to give the number 666, Luther. Bongo was, of course, a good Catholic, while Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, was the great schismatic and the devil's spawn. As far as I am aware, this is the only example of Agrippa's code that has ever been publicly printed. The rest is silence.